Alrighty, hello everyone, good morning, welcome, welcome. Hello Shadow, hello Javai, hello Anna, hello Slugvan, hello Shadow a second time, and hello Datnoob. It is indeed lunchtime, roughly where I am as well, but hey. Alrighty, I'll put on some BGM, please let me know if that's too low, let me try to balance that. I'll just play the entire Terraria OST because I've been thinking about it for a while and I want to listen to it. I missed April Fool's by a few weeks. Why would this be an April Fool's stream? I know I haven't really talked about it a lot on stream, but I love history. And let's just say that I will probably know most of this, but it'll be a good refresher. I used to study Caesar a lot, and a fair couple of others, but it has been a few years, but like, my short-term memory may be really, really bad, but my long-term memory is amazing. Just ordered pizza for late dinner. Hello from US American. The time zones are indeed exciting. Alrighty, how's the background music for everyone else? The Terraria OST. It's a little bit loud for me, but I think that's just my setup, so let me actually turn that down. Hopefully it's at a good volume for all of you. Please let me know, because I don't want you to just have my droning, calmer voice today. Is he named after the salad, or is the salad named after him? The salad is actually named after him because of the tradition where you need to stab it 37 times in the back before consumption. It's a bit much, but not empowering at all. Okay, so make it a little bit quieter? Easy as. How's that? How's that? That's a bit better for me. And yes, I'll be trying to talk a little bit more like my normal voice, though I'm still struggling to get rid of the excitement because I always look forward to streaming. So I'm trying to force myself to sound calm because the goal of this is to be relaxing. Which means I won't be doing my usual shouting laugh as much as possible. Whoop. Okay, good, good, good. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, as we all know, Gaius Julius Caesar is a gigachad, but there's a lot of things you don't know about him. Most of those, this Wikipedia page won't even get into. Because I skim read it for fun. It's not actually that long. It doesn't go into everything. The key thing you probably know him for, and the reason I can guarantee you know this guy, is I'm sure that since you're all English speakers, you're familiar with the month of July. So this dickhead is the reason the month of July exists. The naming convention of months actually used to make sense. You might notice this weird little thing where from September, it has a really consistent naming pattern. September, October, November, December. And if you're familiar with any form of Latin language, you might notice sept means 7. It used to be the 7th month. It is now the 9th. Because of this dickhead and his grandson, who decided, hey, we shouldn't have 10 months. We should have 12. I want a month named after me. So they rescheduled the entire calendar and it stuck, and then they never renamed the months. He's packed by Brutus. No, he was stabbed by Brutus. He was not packed by Brutus. Very important distinction there. He was literally stabbed, not wink wink, nudge nudge, stabbed by Brutus. He actually got stabbed. Probably. Maybe, probably not. It's a bit of weird trivia about Rome. Rome was mostly fine with gay people. The issue was if you were a bottom. If you were the guy getting entered by another man, you were considered incredibly cringe, and it was incredibly shameful. But entering another man is absolutely fine. So it is unlikely that specifically Caesar got packed. No, it's very unlikely he was a bottom. So yeah, a little bit of fun history fact. Oh, also, a fun fact about me. I looked through, over the course of my, 100 hours of streaming, I've now earned a singular dollar in ad revenue. That's not what it's about. It's just a very, very funny number to me. It finally ticked over the $1 mark. Cents at a time. Oh yeah, no, this stuff is way more interesting. I just thought that was very funny. Yeah, we're making it out of the trenches with that $1. I'm glad at least some of you understand why I find that so funny. Fund for the next tournament. Yeah, you know what? Next tournament, I will have a prize pool of $1 US. If I remember. If not, remind me of that, and I will honor it. Poverty over. Yeah, guys, we can go to the dollar store and almost afford something there. It's rather misleading that it's called the dollar store when everything else is more expensive. So yeah, as we go, if I remember them, I will raise some more fun facts of history. But for the most part, I'll be talking about Caesar, because I need to refresh myself. I want to work on a whole bunch of history videos, and I would say I'm busy and it's difficult, but it's actually just I've been being lazy. So this is a great way to practice talking in a calmer voice and try to get my voice more normal, rather than the ridiculous excitement I get when I feel streaming, because despite the fact that I'm an incredibly secretive, stoic person, I'm also incredibly chatty and like talking with people. Even though, let's be real, for the most part, you guys can't exactly talk back nearly as much as I am. You would have to be very, very quick at typing. Taxes? Yeah, but look, I tell you what, I can cover the taxes on the single dollar prize pool. I can handle that. I know it'll slightly increase the cost by like a solid 20%, maybe 30% depending on where you live. I think I can afford that. Like, it's hard to say which costs more, my VTuber model or the taxes on that prize pool, but I think I can cover it. Julius is the pirate game where you stab the barrel evil. Hello, GG, nice to see you again. Yo, 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 don't worry, I understood your intent. And yeah, I don't know the game you're talking about, except for a version of it I've seen with Hosho Marine from HoloLive. But I do know some fun facts about Julius Caesar with pirates. He was actually taken captive successfully by pirates. At the time, he was not emperor. And they offered to ransom him. And he saw that ransom offer, and he got incredibly, incredibly insulted. Said, you should massively raise that, and I am going to kill you in the future for this insult. And they all laughed it off. And he later became friends with him. He's a generally charming guy, but he would constantly repeat that quote-unquote joke of, when I get free, I'm going to hunt you down and kill you. And then the pirates successfully ransomed him, whereupon he hunted them down and killed them. So look, Julius Caesar, unironically, is a Giga Chat. There's a lot of really fun stories about Caesar. Saw that on the shorts. I'm not surprised people have covered it. It's a very, very popular. And it's a very entertaining, understandable story. Even without the ridiculous amount of history context some of his achievements need. Like, the famous quote, the die is cast, that comes from him. But also crossing the Tiber. Crossing the Tiber doesn't really make sense in a modern context. It's just a river. What's the deal with crossing a river? The die is cast, that makes sense to everyone. So, oh yeah, we've made our bet, we've gone in, we can't back out now. Your shorts are filled with a guy that makes grilled cheese? Yo, that sounds hype. Send me a reference to that. Unironically. I love cooking videos. One of my favorites is how to make ancient Byzantine honey fritters. Just a full-on video recreating ancient recipes. And I thought about it because KB likes honey fritters. Pause? Pause about what? Just do the Chernobyl incident. Yeah, I am tempted to make short videos, little bits of fun history facts. I think that could be really fun. I just need to improve my visual storytelling, which is why I've started making YouTube videos again. I'm going to force myself for 1 week. I'm going to make a video a day, and that lines up perfectly because by the end of the 7th, I will be gone for 3 days and won't have time. So you can expect 4 more mediocre shit posts coming from yours truly. I don't actually know much about Chernobyl, though. That could be really, really fun to research. Because I am an ancient hag, I don't know much about modern history. I find medieval and ancient history really, really fascinating. Modern history is usually bogged down too much by propaganda for my personal tastes. Which isn't to say ancient history isn't filled with propaganda, it absolutely is. History is written by the victors, so generally speaking, everything you read is shown in a positive light. A really good example that makes it easier to understand, in the West we call Alexander the Great Alexander the Great. In a lot of Eastern countries and African countries, he's called Alexander the Demon, because he was heavily demonized since he was conquering their territory, which is one that a lot of people can understand, because when you think Alexander the Great, like, that's just his name. But no, there's a very, very sharp divide there. So history is absolutely written by the victors. But with ancient history, generally speaking, there aren't a whole lot of people still actively showing their bias and defending certain things and warping the facts. So if you learn to look through it through a certain type of lens, you can sort of pass what actually happened. Tried to pull Hodoro, got Carnelian pot. That's unfortunate, but hey, at least Carnelian's pretty hot. The newest was funny. The East just calls him Alex. Oh, do you mean like in Fate? It is very funny how much history has been warped by Fate Grand Order and the Fate series as a whole. Very few people knew about Astolfo before Fate. I was one of those people, because I found the Paladins of Charlemagne actually pretty interesting. They have a lot of really fun, goofy stories, and they're adapted very, very well to Fate. Alexander the Worst, right? There are a few historical figures you might be thinking of there. For example, Ivan the Terrible. Generally, those were Russian. Usually the prefix of blank the blank. Usually Russian, but not exclusively. It's just something to do with how they translated it. Arthur is a girl in real history. We don't actually definitively know that King Arthur existed. It's something that's very, very interesting. We know that a knight Mordred existed. That's the closest we have, and their name wasn't Mordred, by the way. I forget their actual name, but it was very explicitly not Mordred. The real-life historical figure, they betrayed a king at the time, but that's the only history we have proving something in the vicinity of King Arthur exists. Your favorite history guy is Vlad the Impaler because, sir, what is wrong with you? I mean, hey, it worked. Would you want to fight Vlad the Impaler if losing against Vlad the Impaler means getting impaled and left to die in a gruesome, torturous way? I won't go into too many details because as much as I really enjoy hearing about ancient torture methods, they are quite graphic and can make you feel very unwell if you're not used to that kind of thing. I'm just a psychopath who's mentally broken. Like, okay, I was actually going to give an example of a torture method I find really interesting, and then I realized what I just said means I shouldn't. Better than punji sticks? Hey, you were thinking of one of the two I was thinking of. Definitely better than punji sticks. Vlad the Impaler is just a discount version of punji sticks. And bamboo. If you know, you know. Alrighty, I will kick it off now and start... inevitably get sidetracked again when I remember some fun history facts. Iron Maiden. Iron Maidens weren't too bad. Like, when you think about it, yes, they're incredibly horrific. But compared to a lot of other torturous execution methods, at least with an Iron Maiden it was relatively quick, even if all of the spikes did stop you from bleeding out. You could get lucky and have a spike go, like, through your heart, and it would be over pretty quickly. Unlike a lot of other torture methods where it's guaranteed to take a while, shall we say. The Bronze Bull, definitely another one. Because, you know, being burned alive, one of the most painful things you can experience. Heimer's carrying your run through F10, why not just use La Pluma? Drawn and quartered is a funny one. Especially because, for whatever reason, the terminology of drawn and quartered has just kind of stuck. Pretty much everyone has heard the term, even though most people don't actually know what it's talking about. But yeah, if you ever think modern day is particularly bad, no it's not. We can just see it easier. Getting cancelled is a discount version of what used to happen, which is you would get burned at the stake for being a witch, because people didn't like you. So people say, oh, cancer culture is this new phenomenon. No. The difference is we, like, lightly socially shame you instead of executing you or banishing you from the city. Which, there are a lot of historical civilizations who would do banishment, including Rome, where they would vote on people and just banish them from the city for a year or two. And if they came back after the banishment, they were welcomed back to like nothing had changed. But literally just a case of people don't like you, you're not allowed to live here anymore. The pig one was interesting. Are you talking about the bronze bull? If so, yes, that's very, very interesting. That's the one most people think of when they think the pig. It's slightly hyped up. We don't have a lot of proof about certain things, like the fact that the creator was put inside, but it's a fun story anyway. Did Napoleon whip and nay-nay during every form of naval warfare? Yes, he actually invented the whip and nay-nay. But Napoleon, unironically, despite being French, is such a giga-chad that you can't even joke about him being cringe. He is insanely impressive, and I really do need to make a video solely based on Napoleon. There's a reason pretty much everyone knows about Napoleon and thinks of him as like a really famous, important general, and that's because he's more built different than the Australian animator who created Peppa Pig and then retired to make Bluey. And if you don't... most of you won't be young enough or old enough to really know what Bluey is, most likely. Bluey is currently... the BBC is now 40% a Bluey merch company. The British Broadcasting Company. 40% of their current profits are just selling Bluey merch. A show that they don't own or make. And it was just one Australian guy who animates it. Like, Disney is trying to get a Bluey theme park. But they can't because they don't actually own the rights. Prisons are expensive, go be someone else's problem. And if they haven't killed you, we'll assume you're better. To a degree, but it wasn't really like imprisonment. It was literally a popularity contest of... they would vote on who they don't like. And whoever got the most votes, a certain number of those people would just be banished. For 5 years, just no, you're not allowed to live in Rome, which was a big deal because, ancient Romans were racist, but not in the way you're thinking. There are plenty of black emperors. Like, genuinely. They don't care about skin color. They care about if you're Roman or not Roman. If you're not Roman, you're a barbarian. Anyone who wasn't Roman was a barbarian. But if you belonged to Rome, you were Roman. It was absolutely fine. Oh, the pig one's about getting licked by... yeah, that one. I won't go into too many details, but... one of these days, I should do some kind of stream about torture and execution devices, because I find it really interesting. I'll just have to be very, very explicit and careful to let people know what they're getting into, so that no one accidentally wanders in. The blue dog? Yes, Bluey. Bluey is a part of the BBC? No, the BBC purchased merchandising rights back when Bluey was only in Australia, when it was first starting out. And then Bluey exploded to such a degree where now, like, almost half of the BBC is just selling Bluey merch. To put it in perspective, it is the most watched television show by minutes. Just, of this year and of last year. Just blanket. It is the most watched show. It is ridiculous how much Bluey has exploded. Most popular blue dog. Yeah, we all grew up on Clifford the Big Red stab wound, and now we're up to a blue dog. Rock voting places, yeah. I don't like your grandma, so we decided we'll banish your son. I mean, yeah, like, you could vote for whoever, you didn't need to give a reason. That was what was so crazy about it. It was literally just a case of, whoever receives the most votes, you're gone. You're not welcome here anymore. Back in the day, we'd play soccer with our elbows and knees. Whoever won got sacrificed to the gods. Ah, yes, the Aztecs. You grew up on Blue's Clues? Same. I'm looking over at my dresser right now. I still have a Blue's Clues dental hygiene sticker. I didn't even watch it that much, just for whatever reason. I've had the same dresser since I was very, very young. I've peeled off some of the stickers because just... I no longer need a bulldozer sticker. But generally speaking, I've kept them just as a fond memory of childhood. Yeah, Bluey is literally worth billions of dollars now. And it's wild because the creator has expressed they might just stop. And I'm pretty sure Disney would unironically send a hitman. So hey Disney, if you're hiring, if you're looking for one. That is the job, right? Modern Blue's Clues. It's Blue's Clues, but insanely popular. It is hard to accurately state just how popular it is. Okay, now before I get too caught off on waffling, which I just can do. Man, I'm just now thinking of all the fun history facts I want to talk about. I'm pretty sure I've already told the one of Napoleon needed to send people on a suicide mission, so he created a new subset of the army and was just like, hey, volunteer only elite fighting force called the Big Dick Saviors of France who wants to volunteer. Because he needed the suicide squad to have high morale. Alrighty, now let's start off with the Wikipedia page of Julius Caesar, better known as Gaius Julius Caesar. Julius was his middle name. It's weird. Naming conventions have changed significantly in the last thousands of years. Modern day Simpsons but for kids, that is a good way to think about it. I'm pretty sure, in terms of comparative episodes, Bluey is more popular than The Simpsons. Like, over its entire life cycle. But The Simpsons has, what, 70 seasons. So obviously it's still outperforming. And I could be wrong about that. That's just an estimation. I haven't looked into the explicit numbers for that. Gaius Julius Caesar lived from the 12th of July 100 BC to the 15th of March 44 BC, and was a Roman general and statesman. As a member of the First Triumvirate, Caesar led the Roman armies in the Gallic War before defeating his political rival, Pompey, in a civil war, and subsequently became dictator from 49 BC until his assassination in 44 BC. He played a critical role in the events that led to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. And yep, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We don't even remember the Roman Republic, realistically speaking. Whenever you think Rome, you think of the Roman Empire. Caesar was kind of the GOAT. So, if you're aware of American politics, you know that thing Trump tried to do a few years ago? Imagine that, but instead he had won, and then also just, like, casually taken over the entirety of Europe. And that is roughly a comparison for how impactful Caesar was. It wasn't a minor thing, and it already sounds major. In 60 BC, Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey formed the First Triumvirate, an informal political alliance that dominated Roman politics for several years. Their attempts to amass political power were opposed by many in the Senate, among them Cato the Younger, with the private support of Cicero. Caesar rose to become one of the most powerful politicians in the Roman Republic through a string of military victories in the Gallic Wars, completed by 51 BC, which greatly extended Roman territory. Wasn't there a whale that terrorized Rome? I think so, but I don't think that was during Caesar's time. Rome actually kind of existed for a ridiculously long period, especially because after it fell, a lot of different people and places tried to lay claim to their legacy. It's very common, it still happens today. Not specifically with Rome, but with past historical factions. For example, the Holy Roman Empire. That was Germany. It was just Germany. It wasn't Rome, it wasn't even Italy. It was just the Pope said, hey, if you do this thing, we'll let you be the Roman Emperor. And they did the thing, because it's great for morale. But you're right, I do believe there was a whale that terrorized Rome at one point. I just don't think it was during Caesar's reign. I remember reading something mentioning that. It could have been Moby Dick, though. I could be confusing it with fiction. During this time, he both invaded Britain and built a bridge across the River Rhine. These achievements and the support of his veteran army threatened to eclipse the standing of Pompey, who had realigned himself with the Senate after the death of Crassus in 53 BC. With the Gallic Wars concluded, the Senate ordered Caesar to step down from his military command and return to Rome. In 49 BC, Caesar openly defied the Senate's authority by crossing the Rubicon and marching towards Rome at the head of an army. This began Caesar's civil war, which he won, leaving him in a position of near unchallenged power and influence in 49 BC. Once again, it's... This has already skipped so much of of Caesar, by the way. The First Triumvirate was a ridiculously big deal. These three essentially were an informal dictatorship who owned Rome at this stage. They theoretically had political rivals, but it's the same way that, like, if you're Australian, Woolies and Coles, wink wink, they're not a monopoly. Or if or for the wider world, there are definitely other phone brands other than Apple and Samsung, right? They exist, right? They definitely exist. They're real. Yeah. They definitely are real. It's not a duopoly. You liked it when you turned into a pincushion. Caesar did kind of get stomped. Like, he got absolutely rolled by a bunch of low-level minions. It was actually such a choke. It was humiliating. Like, what an embarrassment to your entire legacy. My guy really picked a fight with a group of third graders and lost. Like, bro, what are you doing? Step it up. You're letting the whole team down. You're letting the team's legacy down. You've humiliated us. You're a shame on your seat. You're a shame on your legacy. What are you doing? The funniest part of Caesar's assassination is that it was actually wildly unpopular. A whole bunch of senators stepped outside with the body of Caesar and announced to the public, hey guys, we just assassinated Caesar. Aren't we really cool? Aren't you proud of us? And then they were essentially lynched because people really liked Caesar. Gladiators go ham. Oh, there's a gladiator movie, I forget the name. I was looking forward to watching it and then I forgot the name. There are a whole bunch of really excellent gladiator movies though, because even thinking about it today, like, Squid Game blew up in popularity. Squid Game has the same core concept as gladiatorial fights. It has the same core appeal. If they were running modern day gladiator fights, you'd better believe most people would watch it. Same way, if there was an IRL Squid Game where you would actually die, people would watch the hell out of that. Because it is the highest stakes. It is the most investment the participants can have. So it's inherently interesting. 300, I've seen 300. 300 was not a gladiator movie. You guys are misremembering 300. It might just be called Gladiator. Thank you. I will look that up after stream. I've just jotted it down for now. Yeah, to anyone who thinks 300 was a movie about gladiators, it was not. It was a movie about shirtless, attractive men with shields in Greece. The good gladiator movie is called Gladiators. That is probably the one I'm thinking of then. 300 is Spartan propaganda. People really do misunderstand the Spartans, because basically the only thing anyone knows about the Spartans is the movie 300. And it wasn't exactly accurate. My favorite Spartan fact, I won't go too much into detail, I don't want to spend half an hour ranting about Spartans, but just one little fun fact is, it used to be... How can I even sum this up to get it across properly? Basically, it was really intensive schooling, and a whole bunch of elder people were like, oh, all of these whippersnappers just want to play sports with their friends instead of fighting to the death like we do. I don't think I can do a good job summarizing it. The Spartan training regime was really, really funny and goofy to look at. Sparta has gay sex? Yes. A lot of it. Right, I can tell that story. There was a very memed on Alexander the Great movie a few years back, and everyone who wasn't into history was like leaving bad reviews of, why did they make it so gay? It's not even a homophobia thing, just there's so much gay sex. Why is this so gay? Why is he so gay? Why aren't they focusing on all of the things he did? This is really distracting. And then all of the people who were into history left bad reviews saying, hey, why did they tone down the gayness so much? He was way gayer in history. Alexander the Great named like 40 cities after his horse, and about 30 after his quote-unquote best friend, wink wink, if you know what I'm saying. He basically kept around solely for the say gex. Generational conflict actually never changes. True. If you ever feel like, oh, all these whippersnappers don't understand, which a lot of us do about Gen Alpha and Gen Z and a lot of the younger generations. TikTok's confusing to a lot of people. Sticking out your gat for the Rizzler, very, very confusing. I want you to think of this one fact. Back in the day when paper was first invented, there were a lot of elitists going, oh, paper will never compare to a stone tablet. It's just not good. Like, You need to stick with stone tablets. It's the way. It has all of these advantages. It can't be burned. It can't be misplaced. Paper will never have functionality. It's a phase. A more recent example is color TV. When color TV first came out, a lot of people were complaining, oh, it's just a fad. It can't capture the elegance of black and white. And then also when sound came out for TVs, oh, well, why would you want sound? It's disadvantaging all of these actors who aren't necessarily good speakers. All of the really famous actors who are great with their body language but aren't amazing at speaking. Why would we want sound when we can read subtitles just fine? What, can you not read? So it is a natural part of life. Eventually, the young whippersnappers are doing something that doesn't make sense to you, and the instinctive response is, oh, well, that's stupid, I don't care. But when you can, just try to think about it. At the end of the day, if they're having fun, that's what matters. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense to us. There's so much gay sex. That's certainly a unique thing to hear in the morning. We were talking about Alexander the Great. Not talking about gay sex when you're talking about Alexander the Great is like being a fish and denying water. TikTok makes perfect sense, but you have actual concerns about kids not understanding tech. It's different because paper replaced tablets, but everyone is still on the same computers as ever. I understand where you're coming from, but we're viewing that from a historical perspective. For a long time, paper did not replace tablets. For a long, long time, it was a supplementary thing, and it was just considered two different schools of writing. And it gradually phased out tablets because, well, why would you use a tablet? Nowadays, it's obsolete. The real concern with things like TikTok is that they are provably making people's attention spans significantly worse because they incentivize, oh, I'm not immediately engaged, let me just go to the next thing. And the reason that's a problem is, well, I'm sure you can all relate. When you first started a hobby, you're probably pretty bad at it. And it probably felt pretty terrible. But that's fine. You stuck with it, you got better. And there are plenty of things you've done in your life that, well, they weren't immediately fun, but the reward later down the line of you having stuck with them and being able to be proud of what you've done. So that's the main problem with things like TikTok, or YouTube Shorts, or any of the short form videos. That's where the issue lies. A lot of it, though, is just, hey, it doesn't necessarily make sense to us. But no, there are very valid concerns. It's not quite a one-to-one with the paper story. I just tell that to try and give people a bit of perspective where even if something doesn't make sense for you, I'll always try to devil advocate it. And I've pissed off a lot of people IRL with this, where they will tell me something and I will immediately try to argue the other side, even if I disagree with the other side. TikTok is budget Vine. At this stage, Vine is budget TikTok. TikTok's algorithm is kind of ridiculously amazing. To the point where it's considered a Chinese state secret, and if TikTok ever gets bought by a non-Chinese company, which might happen in the future, because the US is considering banning it and is in the process of doing so, then they've essentially guaranteed that the entire algorithm will get deleted. You cannot pass on TikTok's algorithm to a non-Chinese company. So it's very important to them. The algorithm is very strong at keeping people in. Yeah, TikTok has probably the best algorithm for addiction purposes, not for a bunch of other things. You learned how to solve Rubik's Cube in high school after 2 months. Your fastest solve is 15 seconds. That is amazing. I've never solved a Rubik's Cube except for one time where I peeled off the stickers that indicated which color the faces were and rearranged them to be correct. But yeah, it's a skill that's... This is not intended as an insult. Knowing how to solve a Rubik's Cube is functionally pointless. The only actual skills it improves are a bit of basic problem solving and finger dexterity, both of which are pretty valuable. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade here, but so there's no, like, you'll never be held at gunpoint, and the difference between life and death is if you can solve a Rubik's Cube, you know? So the only reason you'd want to learn it is because you're having fun, and it probably wasn't fun to start off. It was probably really, really frustrating. You're probably just a little bit bored. But now it's something you can be proud of, because now it's an actual skill you've developed by sticking with it through those bad times. Fair, but you have no reason to think modern obscuring interfaces will stop being based on things like file systems and microprocessors. I do agree it is a little bit concerning how little people understand tech, to the point where a lot of people don't understand the idea of an internet search engine. They just use Google, but they don't even know it's called Google, they don't recognize the logos. But that's a self-correcting problem. There will always be people who understand this tech, because if there isn't, it won't exist, because no one can maintain it. But I do have concerns about that, but I'm also not, like, too well researched on that, so I can't weigh in too much. That's just a sort of inherent knee-jerk reaction. It's a tangent from the new app is bad decision. Yeah, there are definitely... This isn't me saying there aren't problems. There are definitely problems. But usually problems work themselves out. And it's just important to not be completely dismissive of the new fun thing because you see the problem, if you can. Stick appealing is an extremely target-est solution. What do you mean? How could you guys profile me like this? It's like you thinking I would enjoy all of the JoJo memes. I do, I just haven't seen JoJo. I do very much enjoy the memes. I find that style of humor right up my alley. How could you accurately predict me like this? What's wrong with you? Get outside my head. You were into it for Rubik's Cubing for a few months, but your interests eventually shifted. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with abandoning a hobby if you don't find it fun anymore. I've had a few people abandon Arknights who I helped get into the game, and it's very sad to see them go, but it's a hobby. It's a video game. And if you're not excited for it, if you're not having fun, there are plenty of other things out there that can give you that joy, and I hope you'll find them. And that's my perspective on it. As long as what you're doing is fun for you, I'm happy. It's a hobby too? Yeah. You're currently being held at gunpoint because you don't know how to BXR. I don't know what BXR stands for, but don't worry. If you give me the name, I can hold them at gunpoint, and I've got a loose trigger finger. Starting a portfolio on me now. That would actually be really, really interesting. Unironically, if you want to, that's fine. The reason I joke about stalkers and stuff is because I find it funny. I'm not too worried about that. If you ever see me in real life, feel free to approach and say hi. Just, like, keep in mind I'm a very antisocial person. I will probably say hi back, have a very short conversation, and then leave. And that is nothing against you personally. But if you do ever find me IRL, you're more than welcome to say hi. I just hate my face, so I'll never dox myself. But for example, this coming weekend, I'll be in Melbourne for a HoloLive concert. If you're in Australia, there's only one HoloLive concert going on there. Theoretically, you could find and recognize me. I don't care if you come say hi. But it would be really interesting to see what people can learn about me and predict about me, because while I'm relatively open on stream, I am an incredibly cagey person. There is a lot about me that basically no one knows. Just innately. This isn't even like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool and mysterious. No, this is just how I am. People find it very frustrating. Because they'll ask me, oh, how's your day? And my response will be, oh, you know. And they'll ask me specifics, and I will just be incredibly stonewalling. So not a lot of people know much about me. And there are things about me you will probably never find out, despite them being core parts of my personality and main interests I've had for 15 years. Just because that's the kind of person I am. I have a strong personality. Oh, that's interesting to hear. Like, I'm very curious now what you guys know about me or think you know about me, because I can guarantee some of them will be wrong. Some of the things you think you know about me, I can guarantee they'll be wrong, but I can also guarantee some of them will be right. BXR is a tech on Halo. Oh, right, that's where you shoot the shotgun and punch, right? Is that the one? Or is it the battle, what's it called? I used to know this term. I just haven't played Halo in a long time. Hey, Xiao Lima, welcome, welcome. You haven't missed much. I've been distracted with tangents. I know. The streamer is yapping. What a shock. Theoretically, I'm reading this Wikipedia page. We're 2 paragraphs in, and I've gone off on like 17 tangents, and it's been almost an hour. Favorite HoloLive member? Oh, that's interesting. Do you mean in terms of watching their content? Or like just favorite in general? Because I have a few different answers to that question. Same for streamers, depending on what the criteria are. If it's favorite in terms of watching their content, it's probably Mori, because I don't actually watch any HoloLive streams very often. And the things I most regularly listen to are a couple of her songs. And it's only 2 or 3 of them, but I listen to them relatively frequently. What is HoloLive? HoloLive is the most famous VTuber group. So this whole thing I have where I have a model instead of my face. Basically, they're the most popular, well-known iteration of that. The original who blew up was called Kizuna AI, who It's actually quite funny because now we have actual AIs being streamers in the form of Neurosama, better known as Beetle987. But people weren't sure if Kizuna AI was an actual AI. She wasn't. She was just a VTuber, so she used a model instead of her face. You've always assumed it's like Twitch for VTubers. No. Hololive streams on YouTube. They're basically just a group of really, really popular VTubers. They kind of are the reason VTubing is now popular in the mainstream, though there are obviously exceptions. For example, if you know him, Porcelain Maid has been around longer than Hololive existed. Significantly. And he's been a VTuber that whole time. Oh, I know, I live in South's basement. Hey, I don't have a basement, I just have a graveyard. So if you're in there, like, watch out for the rot, please clean up a few of the cobwebs, you know? Don't talk about Kurosanji. Okay, this might be a bit of a hot take. I enjoy some of Nijisanji's content. Some of their songs, some of their streamers. That being said, yeah, there's, obviously, I don't know too much from an outside perspective. It doesn't look like it's a great time right now to be in Nijisanji. The first VTuber you ever heard of is Project Melody. Melody was one of the older, not in terms of age, older in terms of like she's been around the block a little while. Melody's quite interesting. I believe she predates Hololive, but I forget if I found her right before or... No, pretty sure she predates Hololive, yeah. And she was sort of the first lewd tuber. And that's not a dig against her at all, that's just how she's chosen to do her content, and it was filling a niche that no one else really had before. Her and the other stream, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, she does have very explicit lewds as well, but for what it's worth, she's actually kind of entertaining even without that aspect. Though not my personal cup of tea, so I only ever watched a few of her streams just out of interest. Flock of Cows is starting a similar company for some reason. I don't know who Flock of Cows is, apologies. If I want to know about Nietzsche's... I appreciate the recommendation. Don't worry, Anna. I am quite aware of what's been happening, shall we say. I just don't have any personal stake or personal knowledge outside of general public knowledge. When I find something interesting, I will research it to the point of... No, I shouldn't use that word. That's kind of offensive to some people. I'll research it to a psychotic degree. Which is why we're 2 paragraphs into this Wikipedia page, and I already know a couple essays worth of things that it has just skipped over entirely. The only VTuber you know was the one who banged their boss and thought it was extremely based and funny. Oh, that was like, that was the Face Connect girl, right? Or was that a different one? A lot of them have done it. Melody started straight up doing porn streams. Yeah. But she's also entertaining outside of that, which is very important. The search term... Oh, gotcha. Here's for anyone in chat. Oh, yeah, it was. Got to go, no worries. Have fun, Nucknut. How old was Caesar when he came into power? I think he was in his 50s? Let me check. It has already been covered. Yeah, he was in his 50s. Oh, wait, no. 40s. I would say 40s because I would consider the first triumvirate coming into power. If you're talking explicitly when he became Roman Emperor, it was in his 50s, and then he died 5 years later. Face Connect, I think? Yeah. Face Connect has had some wild members. Like the one who, did a lot of drugs on stream. You don't know any names, but you think her model was blonde. Yeah, don't worry too much about names. We know roughly who you're talking about. It's a very, very, funny story. She had a pseudo-harem with her managers and fans. Yeah, it was wild. I don't want to say a name because it's one of 2. And if I get it wrong, that would technically be slander. But the other person also got into some hot water for some controversy. But hey, look, it does make for good content, just not sustainable. Also, hey, if you want some drama, look into Rushia. If anyone knows how to spell that and can type it in chat for him. She was a Hololive member who has been up to some wild things. Emphasis on the was a Hololive member. Definitely a wild ride if you're looking for some drama. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, just Nuck might not. Yeah, Rusha. If you look up Rusha Hololive, quite a lot of stories there if you have the time and inclination to read through it. She had a lot of very, very funny clips. It's just, okay, wait. Did you ever see or play the game Needy Streamer Overload? That was Russia. Like, the game came out before Russia's Past came out, but that's a good summarization of what happened. Yeah, so that was Russia. Basically consider that like a joking parody of Russia, even though that's not what it was intended for. Yeah, and she does have quite a few names. Alrighty, let's read another paragraph before I inevitably get distracted by another tangent. After assuming control of government, Caesar began a program of social and governmental reforms, including the creation of the Julian calendar. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the reason we have in July and August. Julius and Augustus Caesar. He gave citizenship to many residents of the far regions of the Roman Republic. This is a big deal. As I mentioned earlier, you are either considered Roman or a barbarian. So this was actually a really, really important thing. Citizenship was very, very highly coveted. It was the difference between being scum of the earth, the enemy, and being one of us and protected. He initiated land reforms to support his veterans and initiated an enormous building program. Once again, this was massive. This was I could do a whole half-hour essay on this. Oh, this brings back memories. In early 44 BC, he was proclaimed dictator for life, or dictator perpetuo. Fearful of his power and domination of the state, a group of senators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar on the Ides of March, or the 15th of March, and this was a very, very famous holiday. It's weird we don't have a direct one-to-one on what the Ides of March would be currently. In 44 BC. A new series of civil... Oh, whoops, clicked on Brutus. A new series of civil wars broke out, and the constitutional government of the Republic was never fully restored. Caesar's great-nephew and adopted heir Octavian, later known as Augustus, rose to sole power after defeating his opponents in the last civil war of the Roman Republic. Octavian set about solidifying his power, and the era of the Roman Empire begun. Yeah, Octavian, like, he doesn't get a lot of cred. He was also really, really important. Oh shit, you're looking forward to this? What, the paragraphs of history, or the Miko Neko reading? You're a fan, but you got betrayed, so you moved on, but good luck in her career. I enjoyed a lot of Rush's content. It might sound silly, but the over-the-top screaming I find very, very funny. In certain ways, and she was very good at what she did. There's a reason she made millions of dollars. The one who got affected most is a Clipper channel. Yeah, it is always sad to see all of the sort of support staff who really care about people feel betrayed. But that's the danger with parasocial relationships, which is why I try to always be honest, and it's like, this is my honest take on it. To a degree, I do think of you guys as friends. Like, slightly. I don't have a major distinction between online and offline friends, but I do consider IRL friends much more important. They know more about me, I know more about them. But I consider anyone I spend time chatting with a friend. But if you started, like, actively flirting with me, I'm fine with that, just I won't reciprocate. The part it gets a bit iffy is when streamers start getting parasocial back, or playing on that parasocialism. There is one example I could use, but I shouldn't, because that would be inappropriate of me to bring up, given it's currently happening. It was really embarrassing to see. But effectively, I'm fine with the idol culture. I actually really like the idea of having someone you do sort of hold on a pedestal and idolize as just someone really cool who you aspire to be. And it's fine for that to be like not a 100% honest person. It is something they're presenting. It's not who they are. But it's only fine when you're aware of that, if that makes sense. So as long as both parties are aware that they're striving to be something impressive that you can look up to, but that's not who they innately are and they're just a normal person, and as long as no one's really taking advantage of that, that's my personal 2 cents. You used to watch Minilad and Cryptic, so been there? Yeah, I used to enjoy Minilad. People can get very wild. And yeah, her death metal scream is hilarious. Especially that one Among Us clip that got animated. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. Caesar was an accomplished author and historian, as well as a statesman. Much of his life is known from his own accounts of his military campaigns. Other contemporary sources include the letters and speeches of Cicero and the historical writings of Sallust. Later biographies of Caesar by Suetonius and Plutarch are also important sources. Plutarch especially. Every single historical thing you find about this period will at some stage reference Plutarch. Caesar is considered by many historians to be one of the greatest military commanders in history. His cognomen was subsequently adopted as a synonym for emperor. The title of Caesar was used throughout the Roman Empire, giving rise to modern descendants such as Kaiser and Tsar. He has frequently appeared in literary and artistic works. Yeah, I was about to say the same, and then I realized, hey, they'll probably address it. So Caesar effectively means king now. That's how, I've got to sneeze. Sorry, it wouldn't come out. I hate when sneezes do that. So yeah, Caesar did keep a lot of records, but main sources you'll find are Plutarch. Also, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Cicero or Cicero. Technically, it could be either. There's a lot of arguments for both. You don't like the part of idol culture where they can't accept that the idol has a relationship with the opposite sex. That's only certain parts of idol culture, and I do agree. There are definitely parts that I don't like. And yeah, Caesar was so popular that his name effectively means king. Like Kaiser or Kaiserin for German, Tsar for Russia, these are just based on Caesar. So his name literally is a denotation of rulership. He got ganked at top lane. No, this was more embarrassing than that. My guy picked a fight with wraiths and lost. People on the internet as a whole can be a learning experience, but then when you get a customer service job, you realize it's not just in the internet. Yeah. As I was saying a bit earlier, a lot of people think we live in a really unique time where people are particularly crazy. The only difference is that now we have a lot more access to information, so people are more crazy than they were before in the sense of they're more certain in their ways, and we can see them more often. But if you work a customer service job, you'll meet some crazies. Julius did not get ganked on bot lane, he didn't have a support. He lost a fight to like a group of super minions when trying to defend the inhib. Why the Terraria music? I was thinking about Terraria and wanted to listen to Terraria music. If it's too loud, let me know, I'll turn it down. If you have other song requests, I can potentially put them up. Currently, because I was intending for this to be a really short stream, but we're an hour in and we're just finished the overview. Because my boy is yapping like crazy. I've never Yes, Knocknote, I'm aware Limbus Company, right? I've never actually heard the Calamity music. I've never played Terraria Calamity. I've played a lot of Terraria. It was one of the games I really liked growing up. The cave song is top tier. Yeah, cave theme in Terraria is amazing. I'll put on Terraria Calamity music next, remind me. Once this ends in an hour, when we're 5% further down the page. Gaius Julius Caesar was born into a patrician family. Patrician just means noble, so wealthy. Yeah, these are the elites. It used to be like an explicit thing, where if you were rich enough, you were more important. That's what patrician means. It just means really wealthy. That's a very simplified way of saying it. The gens Julia, on the 12th of July, 100 BC. The family claimed to have immigrated to Rome from Alba Longa during the 7th century BC after the third king of Rome, Tullus Hostilius, took and destroyed their city. Also, I always love reading names that remind me how many words in English are just stolen from Italian. They're Romanized. Because it's actually quite funny. Romanized is a term of like Rome. So romantic languages all have the same base root. Hostile, hostilus. I did a bad job explaining that. I'll try to think of a better way. Calamity main theme is beautiful. I haven't heard it. I'll look forward to that. So a chaebol then. I don't actually know what a chaebol means, unfortunately. But you're more than welcome to explain if you want to. I like learning new things. The family also claimed descent from Julius, the son of Aeneas and the founder of Alba Longa. Given that Aeneas was the son of Venus, this made the clan divine. This genealogy had not yet taken its final form by the 1st century, but the clan's claimed descent from Venus was well established in the public consciousness. From memory, Aeneas is a Battle of Troy, which we haven't explicitly proved. Oh. Right, so we don't have any historical proof that Troy existed. We think we know roughly which town it was based off of, but what was really funny is that back in ancient times, like a few hundred years, like back when Greece and Rome were still around, they were trying to disprove Troy. They were like, there's no way this actually happened. The historians of the time were looking into it, they were getting pissed, they were trying to convince the public, hey, Troy didn't exist. But they kept finding these gravestones of giant 8 or 9 feet tall skeletons with giant armor. Who are all of these supposed ancient Greek heroes. Because blacksmiths were just making them. Like, rich kings would make fake tombs to ancient heroes and then just kind of not record it. So they kept trying to disprove Troy and all of these larger-than-life battles that were just, like, stories, they weren't real. And then they would go digging and they would find all of these fantastic tombs. And the would would just double down even harder that it definitely happened. Korean conglomerate people in a nutshell. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, it's very similar. It's the same way, any one of the Walton or Waldron family, Walton, who descended from the guy who started Walmart. They're all billionaires. So it's similar to that. It was just an explicit term. Like, it wasn't it would be like if billionaire was a title rather than based on the amount of money you have. And it still meant you had roughly the same resources, but it's like, oh, you are a billionaire, that's an intrinsic thing to you. Rather than, like, we don't really have, in English, a modern-day equivalent. Because we, people don't really understand just how much more fair the world is than it used to be. Even though there's still a lot of injustice. There's no evidence that Caesar himself was born by caesarean section. Such operations entailed the death of the mother, but Caesar's mother still lived for decades after his birth, and no ancient sources recorded any difficulty with the birth. My understanding of this was that he semi-invented it, but I don't think it's actually related. I don't know much about caesarean sections, I just know it doesn't really have anything to do with him. That was where my interest kind of died. Despite their ancient pedigree, the Julius Caesars were not especially politically influential during the Middle Republic. The first person known to the cognomen Caesar was a praetor in 208 BC during the Second Punic War. For anyone who doesn't know, praetor, very similar to president, if the president was... So, like, imagine all of the heads of state, all of the really important jobs in America, in the American government, one job, just the praetor. It was a much smaller nation, so that was possible. So you're basically in charge of everything a lot more directly than modern-day leaders, but a good analogy is president. King isn't even really a good analogy because kings didn't do nearly as much as praetors did. He's been real quiet. Julius Caesar been real quiet since Ninja Killer 1 Ego for Mark 11. Evo, yeah. The family's first consul was in 157 BC, though their political fortunes had recovered in the early 1st century, producing 2 consuls in 91 and 90 BC. Consul, similar to praetor, lower ranked, but very, very high ranking. Caesar's homonymous father was moderately successful politically. He married Aurelia, a member of the politically influential Aurelii Cotte. Sorry, I won't pronounce all of these correctly. It's been a while. Producing, along with Caesar, 2 daughters. Buoyed by his own marriage and his sister's marriage, the dictator's aunt, with the extremely influential Gaius Marius, he also served on the Saturnian Land Commission in 103 BC and was elected praetor sometime between 92 and 85 BC. He served as proconsular governor of Asia for 2 years, likely 91 to 90 BC, but we don't know for sure. The first console is the PSPC PlayStation before Christ. Sorry I had to mute to laugh there, because it was a loud belly chuckle, and I'm trying to keep this stream relatively calm. And yeah, this is a very flattering statue of Caesar's aunt, Gaius Marius. He looks like, if any of you ever watched The Princess Bride, you know the guy I'm talking about. Very, very similar. Caesar's father did not seek a consulship during the domination of Lucius Cornelius Cinna, and instead chose retirement. During Cinna's dominance, Caesar was named as Flamen Dielis, a priest under Jupiter, which led to his marriage to Cinna's daughter, Cornelia. The religious taboos of the priesthood would have forced Caesar to forego a political career. The appointment, one of the highest non-political honors, indicates that there were few expectations of a major career for Caesar. In early 84 BC, Caesar's father died suddenly. After Sulla's victory in the Civil War in 82 BC, Cinna's acta were annulled. Sulla consequently ordered Caesar to abdicate and divorce Cinna's daughter. Caesar refused, implicitly questioning the legitimacy of Sulla's annulment. Sulla may have put Caesar on the prescriptions list, though scholars are mixed, and this is basically... this is, if any of you know modern-day history with Stalin, and those lists, very similar. Gaius Marius has been real quiet ever since the announcement of Arlecchino. Yeah, it's like the classic joke of a Beethoven been real quiet since the release of fart.mp3. He locked on for the pic. Yeah, he really did. My guy was locked on like crazy. Oh, I love the poses of all of these ancient statues. Caesar then went into hiding before his relatives and contacts among the Vestal Virgins were able to intercede on his behalf. We don't have an equivalent to Vestal Virgins today. It is hard to correctly state just how important they were, but they were very, very important. Not quite to the same level as like a consul, but close. So this is the equivalent of the head of the state of Florida versus the head of the state of Oklahoma getting into an argument. They're different roles, they're different pathways to roughly the same level of power. The Vestal Virgins were very, very important. So even though Sulla was incredibly powerful at this stage, they were still able to just completely shut him down. What kind of analogy is that? Yeah, sorry. Some of these, very hard to think of a correct analogy to explain some of these roles because we don't have modern day equivalents. Half of me likes to think that they were only allowed these head poses because their body was doing the oinky sploinky. Now, a lot of these statues were originally full body. Not all of them, but a lot. They just, like, broke. They then reached a compromise where Caesar would resign his priesthood, but keep his wife and chattels. Sulla's alleged remark he saw in Caesar many Mariuses is apocryphal. I don't understand this line entirely, so I won't try to. And yet my analogies are a little bit scuffed. I don't always hit with the analogies, but I usually try. So a prostitute but a mayor of state. I mean, the Vestal Virgins were very much not prostitutes. It's in the name. And unlike my 6th grade teacher, who, when asking the class, hey, does anyone know what a virgin is? And I stuck my hand up and said, yes, someone who didn't have sex, and then she, like, got in a verbal argument with me for 20 minutes about, no, it actually means someone who's not married, which is just wrong. And she was 50 and she knew that, so I don't know why she was trying to lie to me like that. Trying to embarrass me in front of the whole class back in 6th grade. I don't hold any kind of grudge. That grudge has been repaid. But no, it's just one of my teachers being absolutely dumb. I didn't even go to a Christian school. I have no idea why she was trying to hard insist that virgin means unmarried instead of virgin. But yeah, the Vestal Virgins, definitely not prostitutes. Unless you're talking about chattel, in which case kind of chattel's more about slavery. That's the 90s teacher mentality, to be honest. Yeah. It was just such a weird thing to lie about, especially in Australia. I would sort of understand in other countries, but Australia is relatively progressive for that stuff because we have a very informal culture. Even though they're wrong, they'll force their right. It was just so strange. She asked the question, I answered, then she insisted I was wrong. It wasn't like she said one thing, and then I corrected her. She asked, does anyone know what a virgin is? And I said, yes, someone who hasn't had sex. She was like, no, wrong. It was a very strange decision. Caesar then left Italy to serve in the staff of the governor of Asia, Marcus Minucius Thermus. While there, he travelled to Bithynia to collect naval reinforcements and stayed sometime as a guest of the king, Nicomedes IV, though later invective connected Caesar to a homosexual relation with the monarch. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I did mention earlier that Caesar was a little bit gay. It was fine. I just wasn't sure if he was a bottom or not. Which is it's a weird distinction, but in Rome it makes a lot of sense. Maybe she was coping for her loss. Hey, look, I won't throw shade at my primary school teachers, even though I have a good enough memory that I could rant for hours. My short-term memory is so bad, but I got a nat 20 when rolling for long-term memory. People will ask me, hey, do you remember? Rather, I'll bring up something that happened 5 years ago and people just doubt me and it pisses me off like crazy. Because, yeah, it was just an ordinary Tuesday conversation, but I remember word for word what you said. What do you mean you don't remember? Why are you lying to me? Don't worry, I will. Oh, you'll get a grudge with my primary school teachers on my behalf? That's fine. One of the other things I remember about primary school is, for whatever reason, one afternoon, an after-school club decided to get everyone in a general assembly and try to teach us an English version of the Toreador March. Just one verse. I do still remember that verse, but it's not a good translation. I can now actually sing the Toreador March, and it doesn't even match up, like, syllable-wise. You're writing a twit longer, yeah. You don't know their name, but we need to cancel my primary school teacher, who I'm pretty sure is dead. You guys underestimate how much of an old hag I am. He then served at the siege of Mytilene, where he won the civic crown for saving the life of a fellow citizen in battle. Medal of Honor. Very high. Yeah. Very high military decoration. The privileges of the crown. The Senate was supposed to stand on a holder's entrance, and holders were permitted to wear the crown at public occasions. Whetted Caesar's appetite for honors. So basically, like, imagine a medal that means any person in political office has to salute you when you walk past them. So we do actually have a relatively similar thing IRL. After the capture of Mytilene, Caesar transferred to the staff of Publius Servilius Vatia in Cilicia, that's right, Cilicia, before learning of Sulla's death in 78 BC and returning home immediately. He was alleged to have wanted to join in on the consul Lepidus's revolt that year. But this is likely literary embellishment of Caesar's desire for tyranny from a young age. Yep, they really made him out to be super power hungry. He wasn't, like, ridiculously power hungry. He just got put in a position where everyone's innate desire for some degree of power, most people, just kind of like, he had the option, so he took it. Your primary school teacher has been real quiet ever since the Caesar cover stream. Yeah, she hasn't said nothing since I started talking about Julius Caesar. What is this, Cutter? This is Caesar, I know. It's spelled slightly differently, and he's not as handsome as Cutter is pretty. I like Cutter's design a lot. I was looking at it recently for... I won't spoil that. Even though it probably won't come out, because I'm working on way too many projects. And yeah, this is Augustus, I believe, wearing the crown. It's a very, very visible. The civic crown was a literal crown, a wreath. It's a very visible military honor. It's not like the badges we have now. Afterwards, Caesar attacked some of the Sullan aristocracy in the courts, but was unsuccessful in his attempted prosecution of Gnaeus Cornelius Dolabella in 77 BC, who had recently returned from a proconsulship in Macedonia. Proconsulship is a slightly more important consulship. It's kind of like... It's effectively Caesar of Macedonia. Not Caesar, what's the other word? Praetor. So it's, you're still subservient to the praetors, but you effectively own the entire country for a few years. Why Vermeil will never get a skin is mind blowing. Look, it's a fun story, so I figured rather than just bringing it up on stream from time to time, I should make something about it. I couldn't figure out with my editing software how to blur things, so I just did giant black bars, and I think that made it worse. The video. I would have preferred to blur those, so I definitely need to improve at editing. You saw him attack someone in the courtroom. He jumped right over that bench. There was someone who did that recently. I don't think you saw Augustus Caesar do that. Going after a less well-connected senator, he was successful the next year in prosecuting Gaius Antonius Hybrida, later consul in 63 BC, for profiteering from the prescriptions, but was forestalled when a tribune interceded on Antonius's behalf. This is basically, hey, this guy's a war profiteer committing war crimes, and then the Senate got together and voted, hey, no, he's not. Well, yes, he is, but we don't care. We like him, so piss off. The laws don't apply to people we think are important. That's what a tribune is. After these oratorical attempts, Caesar left Rome for Rhodes, seeking the tutelage of the rhetorician Apollonius Molon. This is a really weird job title. It's like a philosopher, someone who specializes in talking in interesting ways. You like when Caesar died because he tried to save Joe Star because he is his friend. Hey, spoilers! I haven't seen Jojo. Why are you doing me dirty like that? Don't worry, I'll probably forget by the time I get up to it. It's like a master public speaker. Yeah, it's a master of rhetoric. Because the idea of debating people in public used to be like a full-on thing, a full-on career. It's strange to think about. Pretty sure it was. Let me phone my boy Abraham. Abraham was not around during the time Julius Caesar was. I should know. I was there. While traveling, he was intercepted and ransomed by pirates in a story that was later much embellished. Yes, this is the one I was telling the embellished version of earlier. A simplified version of the embellished one. But it was a very funny story that people massively, massively hyped up because it was an inherently funny story. And it's funnier to slightly embellish something that's very, very funny. He's a master debater. Yes. He is a literal master debater. According to Plutarch and Suetonius, he was freed after paying a ransom of 50 talents. Talents? This is like a small fortune. Talents, very, very, this is a lot of money. I know it's only 50 of them. We don't have an equivalent currency. This is like handing someone 50 gold bars. Not quite that extreme, but like, to put it in perspective, a talent is a good chunk of money. Dang, he won't pick up in real quiet when he went to watch Deadpool 2 and hasn't come back since. No, hey, you clearly do not know Abraham. If you think he's actually watching Deadpool 2, he hated the first one. He ain't going to the sequel. And he responded by returning with a fleet to capture and execute the pirates who had ransomed him. The recorded sum for the ransom is literary embellishment, and it's more likely that the pirates were sold into slavery per Velleius Paterculus. Yeah, like, this is slightly embellished, we don't know for sure. He definitely went after the pirates. And he told them he would when he was being ransomed off by the pirates. Which is just kind of stupid, but because it worked out, it's Giga Chad, which is a summary of the world. His studies were interrupted by the outbreak of the Third Mithridatic War over the winter of 75 and 74 BC, back when he was 26. Caesar is alleged to have gone around collecting troops in the province at the locals' expense and leading them successfully against the Mithridates' forces. 50 gold bars is cheap AF even on Minecraft. Okay. A Minecraft analogy would be if someone said, hey, we will give you your horse back that you named if you give us 5 Ender Dragon eggs. Not really a good deal, is it? I don't know. I don't really play Minecraft. I enjoy building things, and then I get bored and don't play it for like 5 years. While absent from Rome in 73 BC, Caesar was co-opted into the pontifices in place of his deceased relative Gaius Aurelius Cotta. From memory, these are pontifex, like priests. Yeah, college of priests in the Roman religion. The promotion marked him as a well-accepted member of the aristocracy with great future prospects in his political career. The earlier priest-based role he was getting was kind of a dead-end job. The pontifices is more like, hey, we actually like you, we think you're going places, so you're going to be part of the important aspect of the government who does meaningful things and has a path forward. Caesar decided to return shortly thereafter, and on his return was elected one of the military tribunes for 71 BC. Tribune, hard to describe. It's basically like a war council member. Yeah, it's above centurion but below the legate. So it's I think sergeant maybe is a better. It's really hard to translate into modern terms. It's an officer, so it's someone important, but it's not like super incredibly important. Effectively, he got drafted, but to a good position. Same, you played for the first time on your buddy, and when he logged in, he was in the nether. It is one of those things where the rise of the internet has made Minecraft and games like it a little bit less fun because there's less organic exploration. But it's made it more fun in a lot of other ways. It was just the main reason I liked it was the organic exploration. Can I go over the history of the pyramids next stream? I mean, what? Ancient Egypt has a lot of really fun history, but the pyramids themselves, there aren't too many funny stories. There are a few, though. Like, did you know the reason we can't find any mummies? And mummies were a real thing. They would mummify the bodies as an ancient burial rite in Egypt. But the reason we can't find many is because back in, I think it was like the 16th or 18th century, a whole bunch of British archaeologists dug up all of the mummies and used them as seasoning. So they would snort mummies. These ancient corpses. So that's why they aren't around anymore, and that's why things like the pyramids often had fake bodies and fake rooms, because they didn't want anyone messing with the bodies. So if anyone ever thinks that was a stupid decision, why would you do that? Well, a bunch of British archaeologists snorted them, so they were right. The tragedy of Wiki on second monitor. What do you mean on second monitor? It's on my first monitor. My chat is on my second monitor. Yeah, Egypt. Egypt is really interesting. It's just, there are less individually pivotal figures in Egypt because we don't have as many amazing records because it was a bit earlier. The main reason Caesar particularly is notable is he is incomparably influential on how history is played out. And there's a lot of really, really good documents, first-hand accounts, second-hand accounts, and histories written from roughly the time that only have some degree of propaganda. The British eat them? Yeah, the British eat them. Mummies were also used as paint? Yes. Lead was also used as paint in ancient Egypt. That died out real quick. When does Candace come to play in these pyramids? Believe it or not, Candace is not from ancient Egypt. Root beer floats. I don't actually think I've ever had a root beer float. I don't even know if anywhere nearby serves them. Otherwise I would, because now I'm curious. I like tasting new foods. But hey, I'm glad you're having fun, Jabai. They do sound really amazing, and I hear people talk about them constantly. I've just never really had one. There's no evidence Caesar served in the war he was a tribune for, even though the war on Spartacus was ongoing. During his term, he did, however, agitate for the removal of Sulla's disabilities on the plebeian tribunate, and for those who supported Lepidus' revolt to be pardoned. So basically just, hey, people revolted, let's pardon them. Just take some ice cream and mix it with root beer. Oh, is that what it is? Where can I get root beer? Maybe I'll try that. I don't have ice cream or root beer. You serve it to yourself? Gotcha. That would explain why no one really sells it, though. Flan is also pretty bomb. What's flan? I've heard the term before, but I don't actually know what it is. These advocacies were common and uncontroversial. Yeah, like Caesar effectively going to bat and saying, hey, look, we've all been there. We've all tried to, like, overthrow the state and assassinate some folks. Come on, am I right, guys? Like, let's be... They're still Roman, you know? They're still the boys. Yeah, he stabbed a guy, but, like, I'll slip you a 20 under the table. It was pretty common. The next year, 70 BC, Pompey and Crassus were consuls and brought legislation restoring the plebeian tribunate's rights. This was a big deal because the plebeian tribunate was one of 3 ruling bodies, and for a little while they didn't have any ruling power. And plebeian was people like you and me. It was plebeians and patricians and senators from memory. So were you rich, were you elected, or were you normal? And this was the normal people's rights. It's a Mexican treasure, but it's so good. I don't actually think I've ever eaten Mexican food. I need to try flan one way or another. Let me jot it down. I'll just... I'll at least look into it. Flan food. Oh, right, it's a cake, isn't it? Yeah, like, I'm always down to try new foods. Gotta go sleep now, and by the way, centaurs have 2 rib cages. Yeah, centaurs are strange when you think about them. And I hope you sleep well. Sorry, I can't read your name. I can only read Ramaji. But it's been great having you here. I can read a little bit of, I can read a few Japanese characters, but not many. Only Ramaji. Okay, the next year, yada yada. What? Oh, yeah. The next year, 70 BC. Yeah, that's where I got up to. One of the tribunes, with Caesar supporting, then brought legislation pardoning the Lepidan exiles. Right, I did read that. It's Yuri. Ah, gotcha. Oh, is that a long-term bait of trying to get me to say that? Yuri. Sesbian Lex. And yeah, sleep well, Yuri. From his quaestorship in 69 BC. Nice. Oh, went to highlight 69. Thank you, Wikipedia. I'm not even going to attempt to explain quaestorships. Just high-ranking office. Not quite as high-ranking as the other ones. Caesar was allotted to serve under Gaius Antistius Vestus in Hispania Ulteria. His election also gave him a lifetime seat in the Senate. Lifetime seats were pretty common. This was effectively, hey, you've done something really important, so you will always have the right to vote. We take the right to vote for granted. That wasn't the case. Especially, like, important senatorial votes. Like, IRL... Imagine actually just being told, hey, for the rest of your life, you can vote in the actual US Senate. You have equal votes as all of the other 200 senators. Just rock up whenever you can throw in your 2 cents. It was more common back then, but it's a funny mental image now. However, before he left, his Aunt Julia, the widow of Marius, died, and soon afterwards, his wife Cornelia died shortly after bearing his only legitimate child, Julia. This was very common. Julia was a very common name. Also, Octavia was very common, which just means 8th born. A lot of women in ancient Rome have, like, the same names, and it gets very confusing, because of the naming scheme in Rome basically means you would always name your kids the same thing. It's something I could do a whole video on, but I can't really explain super well off the rip. He gave eulogies for both at public funerals. During Julia's funeral, Caesar displayed the images of his aunt's husband Marius, whose memory had been suppressed after Sulla's victory in the Civil War. This happens. If you lose a civil war, people don't talk about you. Some of the Sullan nobles, including Quintus Lutatius Catulus, who had suffered under the Marian regime, objected, but by this point depictions of husbands in aristocrat women's funerary processions was common. So yeah, this was... He slipped around the back door. You can't object. Contra Plutarch, Caesar's actions here were likely in keeping with a political trend for reconciliation and normalization, rather than a display of renewed factionalism. So basically, not trying to restart the Civil War, just reconciling the different parties. We should acknowledge he at least existed. Caesar quickly remarried, taking the hand of Sulla's granddaughter, Pompeia, which is really a Giga Chad move, given he was active enemies with Sulla for a little bit. For much of this period, Caesar was one of Pompey's supporters. Caesar joined with Pompey in the late 70s to support restoration of tribunician rights. His support for the laws recalling the Lepidan exiles may have been related to the same tribune's bill to grant lands to Pompey's veterans. Caesar also supported the Lex Gabinia in 67 BC, granting Pompey an extraordinary command against piracy in the Mediterranean, and also supported the Lex Manilia in 66 BC to reassign the Third Mithratic War from its then commander Lucullus to Pompey. This stuff doesn't really matter unless you're doing a historical deep dive, because this is just, the broad strokes of war, not the individual battles. Which makes sense, given. Election as Pontifex Maximus. It's crazy to think that Pontifex Maximus was a massive big deal, and then it sort of stopped being a big deal because Caesar became Caesar, and then it became a big deal later. This is effectively Pope. This is the Pope. But imagine if the Pope was equivalent to the King. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell. I mean, Harry Potter spells are all just Latin, and these are Latin names, so it does make sense. Pontifex Maximus, Expelliarmus, Sectum Sempra. It's actually a relatively common trend. For example, Fuego in a lot of fantasy just is fire, but it literally just means fire. Also, actually, before anyone makes fun of that, Centaur and Minotaur literally translate to horseman and bullman. Satyr is Roman for goatman. If you called a fictional creature a horseman, you'd be a bit confused. If you say centaur, for whatever reason, everyone understands. It means the same thing. Wingus dingus. Erectile dysfunction. It's if you ever want to laugh, read through just names of medication and imagine them as wizards, and that's their wizard name. People have done a lot of memes about that. 4 years after his aunt Julia's funeral in 65 BC, Caesar served as a curule aedile and staged lavish games that won him further attention and popular support. This is like, I guess Circus Master is the best equivalent. It was a major thing. This is a good summary. You maintain all the buildings, you build conflict trust, you deal with public works. Circus Master / architect leader, it's a really weird job. Hey man, the spell is a little too OP, yeah. Erectile dysfunction outright ends a bloodline. It's a delayed, it's a curse type spell though, it's delayed. It doesn't immediately kill you, it just stops you from creating reinforcements. You looked up the VTuber and the first thing you see is abusive? Yeah. I wasn't kidding when I said, if you want a good summary of Russia, even though this wasn't intentional, Needy Streamer Overload, if you've played that, imagine Russia is the main character. There you go, that's a watered down version of what Russia was like. Looking for, yeah, there's a lot of wild and fun stories. Unfortunately also involving Mafu Mafu. I love the guy, he's very wholesome, but things go dark. Caesar also restored the trophies won by Marius and taken down by Sulla over Jugurtha and the Cimbri. According to Plutarch's narrative, the trophies were restored overnight to the applause and tears of joy of the onlookers. I like that they specify according to Plutarch's narrative because he did slightly embellish. Any sudden and secret restoration of this sort would not have been possible. Architects, restorers, and other workmen would have to have been hired and paid for, nor would it have been likely that this work could have been done in a single night. It is more likely that Caesar was merely restoring his family's public monuments, consistent with standard aristocratic practice and the virtue of pietas. And over objections from Catulus, these actions were broadly supported by the Senate. Basically, a whole bunch of rebels got stripped of their medals, he gave them back. In 63 BC, Caesar stood for praetorship and also for the post of Pontifex Maximus, who was the head of the College of Pontiffs and the highest-ranking state religious official. In the pontifical election before the tribes, Caesar faced two influential senators, Quintus Lutatius Catulus and Publius Servilius Isauricus. That's right. Caesar came out victorious. Caesar, not Caesar. Many scholars have expressed astonishment that Caesar's candidacy was taken seriously, but this was not without historical precedent. Ancient sources allege that Caesar paid huge bribes or was shamelessly ingratiating. That no charge was ever laid alleging this implies that bribery alone is insufficient to explain his victory. Basically, Okay, so everyone remembers Coney 2012, right? Like, even just the meme name? Where a random YouTuber named Coney decided, hey, I'm going to run for president. Imagine he'd won. Like, it's not quite a one-to-one, because it makes more sense in a historical context. It was just confusing to the historians, because historians were generally from well-off families. But it would be like if, in this coming election, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson ran for president and won. And we had The Rock as president. You'd be a bit confused. Like, it makes sense, he has the resources, he's well-liked enough, but it's kind of out of left field. You voted for Beetlejuice. You could never elect Beetlejuice, you can't say his name a third time, otherwise bad things happen. If bribes or other monies were needed, they may have been underwritten by Pompey, who Caesar at this time supported and opposed Catullus's candidacy. This is where the triumvirate starts coming into play, and what I was talking about, they basically owned everything. Pompey was not part of the triumvirate, but if you're friends with very influential people, case in point, Caesar, you can have a lot of things go your way. Literal nepotism. Thank goodness we only said it 2 times. Yeah, that was very intentional. A rule of 3s would have me say it a 3rd time, but hey. It'd be like saying Macbeth while backstage. Don't worry, you mean the other Jeedlebuus. Hello, good sir. Hello, Samuel Castillo. Good to see you as always. And sorry, I always say your full name. If you have a nickname or a shorter version you want me to call you, let me know, even if it's just Sam or Samuel. The one that spells BMW like B-Y, W and Y, I don't actually know that Jeedlebuus. Call you Slug? Sure thing, Slug fan. I'll call you Slug fan. But sure, I can call you Slug. If I forget, remind me once or twice, and then it'll stick. Because, as I'm sure you've noticed, my short-term memory might be bad, my long-term memory is very, very good. He's a small dude that lives in New York City. I don't know the joke you're making. Apologies. Not trying. I was about to say I'm sure it's funny, but that would have come across as passive-aggressive or rude. That's not the intent, I just I don't have the necessary context. Many sources also assert that Caesar supported the land reform proposals brought that year by plebeian tribune Publius Servilius Rullus. However, there are no ancient sources so attesting. Caesar also engaged in a collateral manner in the trial of Gaius Rabirius by one of the plebeian tribunes, Titus Labienus. Labienus. For the murder of Saturninus in accordance with a Senatus Consultum Ultimum some 40 years earlier. The most famous event of the year was the Catilinarian conspiracy. I love how many of these terms are incomprehensible now, especially place names. While some of Caesar's enemies, including Catulus, allege that he participated in the conspiracy, the chance that he was a participant is extremely small. LSTER? I don't get that one either. You missed you a little, but don't tell anyone, it's a little embarrassing. Oh, I've missed you a little bit as well, Sam. And don't worry, there's nothing embarrassing about that. You weren't here when I went on it. Very short rant about parasocialism. Parasocialism is normal. It's only a problem when it becomes extreme. If you're invested in something, of course you want to see more of it. And if you ever don't like my content, that's also fine. And don't feel bad about me potentially missing you. I'm just happy that you're happy, however you're doing that. Whatever method you find to bring yourself joy, that makes me happy. Whether that's my content, whether that's snorting lines of coke, though I wouldn't advise that. Whatever you do, as long as you're enjoying yourself. You'll put it in Discord? Ah, thank you very much. Is that our boy Catulus or a different person with the same name? That's our boy Catulus, that's the same one. Now, like, Catulus low-key, like, it's wild to think about. Catulus thought he was Caesar's rival. No one knows Catulus. Everyone knows Caesar. My guy did a diss track and just got completely smoked. It's like Carl Jr. from the local basketball team throwing a diss track at Eminem and just no one even responds or notices. My guy really thought he was him. Catulus thought he was such hot shit. How deep is a 5-foot hole? About 20 feet. Oh, that one. I do know that one. That guy's a classic. Carrot. Oh, you're thinking of the poet. No, I'm talking about the catalyst from earlier in this specific Wikipedia page. No, there are a few different catalysts. I don't think he was the poet. He was a politician. Now, praetorship. Caesar won his election to the praetorship in 63 BC easily and, as one of the praetor-elects, spoke out that December in the Senate against executing certain citizens who had been arrested in the city conspiring with Gauls to furtherance of the conspiracy. Caesar's proposal at the time is not entirely clear. The earlier sources assert that he had advocated life in prison without trial. The later sources asserted that he wanted the conspirators imprisoned pending trial. Most accounts agree that Caesar supported confiscation of the conspirators' property. Caesar likely advocated the former, which was a compromise position that would place the Senate within the bounds of Lex Sempronia Decapiti Civis, and was initially successful in swaying the body. However, a later intervention by Cato swayed the Senate at the end for execution. This one, the confiscation of property is pretty funny. Essentially, like, you know how you have a house and like a farm? No, you don't anymore. Now the Roman public has a house and a farm. But no, like, the shady part is when certain people who were senators owned the fire brigade and would light your house on fire and then offer to buy it for you. And if you said no, well, mysteriously the fire brigade wouldn't show up. And if you said yes, well, they own the fire brigade. Of course they're going to show up and put out the house. And now it's their house at a fire sale prices. There's so many wild stories that, like, the empire existed for a while. They get up to a lot of shit. What color is a carrot? Carrot, it's a carrot. Yeah. Catalyst 2 L's is the poet. Gotcha. He needs both because he hands out. Catalyst has 2 L's. He needs both because he hands them out to everyone he writes about. Yeah, it's like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And a few others. Like the guy who wrote The Little Mermaid. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. Just incredible amounts of L's to hand out. During his year as praetor, Caesar first attempted to deprive his enemy Catulus of the honor of completing the rebuilt Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, accusing him of embezzling funds and threatening to bring legislation to reassign it to Pompey. So yeah, Catulus low-key was a rival for Caesar for a while. He just got completely stomped. Also, yes, year as praetor. Imagine a presidential election every year. There are also 2 of them. Oh yeah, Hans Christian Andersen, that's the one, thank you. So Catulus thought he was hot shit. Caesar's flinging back. This proposal was quickly dropped amid near universal opposition. He then supported the attempt by plebeian tribune Metellus Nepos to transfer the command against Catiline from the consul of 63, Gaius Antonius Hybrida, to Pompey. After a violent meeting of the Comitia Tributa in the Forum, where Metellus came into fisticuffs with his tribunician colleagues Cato and Quintus Minucius Thermus. Oh, sorry, let me turn down the terrarium music. It's getting a little bit loud. And yes, they used to actually throw hands in the Senate. That's, it was common. They would literally get into fistfights. That would make things way more interesting. The Senate passed a decree against Metellus. Suetonius claims that both Nepos and Caesar were deposed from their magistracies. This would have been a constitutional impossibility. So this is a historian just, like... This is like if someone, as a historian, wrote that Trump got impeached and arrested. He hasn't been arrested yet. Maybe he won't. It's just blatantly wrong propaganda against someone because you don't like him. Mortal Kombat in the Senate. Yeah, like... So, you've just reminded me a fun fact most people don't know about the gladiatorial fights. So, the closest ring of gladiatorial fights, the splash zone as it were for really important people like senators only. And they were the closest to the ring, the best view. However, in gladiator fights, it was relatively common for weapons to break and splinter and go flying. So there have been multiple senators who, while watching a gladiator fight, have had a sword through their chest and died. And it wasn't an attempted murder, it was just bad luck on their part. So yeah, as much as it's definitely the most exciting part and the best view, you wouldn't necessarily want to be in the good seats. You'd want the patrician seats or the equestrian seats for the gladiatorial combat. You wouldn't want to be front row, because you, like, people have died. You got the full experience, yeah. My guy wanted to be a gladiator so bad. Which led Caesar to distance himself from the proposals. Hopes for a provincial command and need to repair relations with the aristocracy took priority. He also was engaged in the Bonadia affair, where Publius Clodius Pulcher snuck into Caesar's house sacrilegiously during a female religious observance. Caesar avoided any part of the affair by divorcing his wife immediately. So basically, someone snuck in and banged his wife and he divorced her, claiming that his wife needed to be above suspicion. But there is no indication that Caesar supported Clodius in any way. Yeah, it was relatively common that... I mean, it's we have a modern-day equivalent, it's just not super popular, where effectively, like, two gay guys will marry different women as an excuse to be gay and be above suspicion. It used to be very common. Likewise, women would marry men as an excuse to be lesbian without suspicion. Happened a lot more like 20, 30 years ago. Doesn't really happen in the Western world today. But basically, like, he was getting accused that, oh, during this famous religious female-only ceremony, Caesar helped a guy sneak in to bang his wife, and he just immediately distanced himself from that. After his praetorship, Caesar was appointed to govern Hispania Ulteria pro consule, so without consul. Deeply indebted from his campaigns from the praetorship and for the pontificate, Caesar acquired military victory beyond the normal provincial extortion to pay them off. And yes, people would go into debt to try to get elected as a pontiff or a praetor. They would bribe people, they would run campaigns, they would have to individually fund it. He campaigned against the Calaci and Lusitani and seized the Calaci capital in northwestern Spain, bringing Roman troops to the Atlantic and seizing enough plunder to pay his debts. Very common way of doing it. Claiming to have completed the peninsula's conquest, he made for home after having been hailed imperator, which is basically emperor. Yeah, rough equivalent of commander. Very, very important. It became that later, that's right. When he arrived home in the summer of 60 BC, he was then forced to choose between a triumph and election to the consulship. Triumph is hard to explain. A triumph is basically a city-wide celebration of your honor. It's really, really hard to explain, but it was a major deal. Like, either you can become a consul, which is like second only to the president, or you can have a massive feast in your celebration that the entire town takes part on. Both of these are really major honors that we do not have an equivalent for. It's a parade for this one guy. No, like, you might say that as a joke. It would be like a Disney-level multi-day long, borderline week-long parade and celebration because you're a Chad. It's really big. Yeah, both of these are massive honors. Very few people got the chance. Either he could remain outside the Pomerium, Rome's sacred boundary, awaiting a triumph, or cross the boundary, giving up his command and triumph to make a declaration of consular candidacy. So basically, if you enter Rome's boundary, the Pomerium, before the triumph has been declared, you're no longer qualified. Because it's a welcoming home parade, and if you're already home, tough luck. But if he doesn't, and he hopes for a triumph, then he can't run for consul. Because they were basically doing the elections at the time, so he would have to give up on the celebration about him to make a running. It's like your birthday. It would be like if on your birthday, the entire city you live in decided, you know what, this is a Shao Lima week. The whole week, like, you get everything for free, and all of us are going to follow you around and just give you whatever you want and try to make you happy. It's really hard to describe. It would be like if Jeff Bezos showed up at your birthday personally and was like, yo, I kind of want to make you a billionaire. Like, I've got the cash. Do you want it in check or in cash? I'm exaggerating it slightly there, but it was a very major deal. Attempts to waive the requirement for the declaration to be made in person were filibustered by the Senate, by Caesar's enemy Cato, even though the Senate seemed to support the exception. So yeah, he was saying, hey, I want to run for consul, I don't want to give up the triumph, surely you'll let me declare I want to run for consul from outside the city. And then Cato, everyone else was like, yeah, look, this makes sense, let's give him the exception. And Cato Giga Chad all over him. this guy right here. It's like, nah bruh, bet. Show up or shut up. Faced with the choice between a triumph and the consulship, Caesar chose the consulship. So Cato was like, look, if you want to get elected, we ain't throwing no parade in your honor. Get your ass over here. Because they weren't on good terms. Free like in Limbus Company, where you farm shard boxes to get any ID you want for free. The reason I've been putting off Limbus Company, I'm not sure it'd make for good content if I play a game for the first time on stream. So I'm considering just starting Limbus Company. Then maybe once I'm a bit better and understand the game more, I can think of ways to make content about it. But it does look interesting, and it looks like it has really great designs, so I could talk about that as well. Exactly what you were thinking of. Okay, perfect. Perfect analogy then. But yeah, they're like, hey man, either you get a parade in your honor or you can run for consul. And Caesar was like, okay, yes, it would make me feel nice if you marked me down as 53rd place in the history's greatest Giga Chads of all time in the official book of awesome. But I think I will take the political role instead. Caesar stood for the consulship of 59 BC along with 2 other candidates. Like, it was a big deal, not many people could do it. His political position at the time was strong. He had supporters among the families which had supported Marius or Cinna. His connection with the southern aristocracy was good. His support of Pompey had won him support in turn. So he'd supported previous guys who should have been his rivals, and as a result, everyone kind of respected him. At the time, he made the good choice of going, hey look, this guy's more qualified for the job. I'm going to help him do his best and make sure Rome thrives. And then later on, when you're running, they're like, okay, bet. We'll give you a hand too. Paying it forward. His support for reconciliation in continuing aftershocks of the Civil War was popular in all parts of society. So yeah, basically, hey, let's stop hating each other. Let's be Rome again. He was supporting both sides. Everyone kind of liked him. These days, neutral positions would kind of get you hated by both sides, but back in the day, that wasn't the case. With the support of Crassus, who supported Caesar's joint ticket with one Lucius, Caesar won. Lucius, however, did not, and the voters returned Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus instead, one of Caesar's long-standing personal and political enemies. So this is basically a sitcom plot where your childhood bully is now your secretary, and you're forced to work together, and like they're your vice president now, and you're the president. You think Library of Ruin is better of the two, but both are story-driven games. Library of Ruin has an end, while Limbus still has a few years ahead. I'm thinking of whichever one is the free one. The other one still isn't on sale. But I will look into it. I think I'll just start playing them, because it would be more fun to make content about that once I have context, rather than just going into it blind. Limbus is the free one? Ah, yeah, I thought that was the case. After the election, Caesar reconciled Pompey and Crassus, 2 political foes, in a 3-way alliance misleadingly termed the First Triumvirate in modern times. This was not actually the First Triumvirate. Like, it is a bit misleading. It's just a fun way to sum it up. Caesar was still at work in December of 60 BC, attempting to find allies for his consulship, and the alliance was finalized only sometime around its start. Pompey and Crassus joined in pursuit of 2 respective goals, the ratification of Pompey's eastern settlement and the bailing out of tax farmers in Asia, many of whom were Crassus's clients. So basically all 3 were like, hey, let's work together to make ourselves a lot richer. All 3 sought the extended patronage of land grants, with Pompey especially seeking out the promised land grants for his veterans. These guys fought and died for me, they should get their awards. They were pushing for that, so that one makes perfect sense. Caesar's first act was to publish the minutes of the Senate and the assemblies, signaling the Senate's accountability to the public. He then brought in the Senate a bill crafted to avoid objections to previous land reform proposals and any indications of radicalism, to purchase property from willing sellers and distribute to Pompey's veterans and the urban poor. So, hey, look, as a state, let's give the homeless some homes, and let's support our military veterans. It would be administered by a board of 20, with Caesar excluded, and financed by Pompey's plunder and territorial gains. So they'll pay for it, they'll make sure it's not corrupt, just sign off on it. Referring it to the Senate in hopes that it would take up the matter to show its benefits for the people, there was little opposition, and obstructionism that occurred was largely unprincipled, firmly opposing it not on grounds of public interest, but rather opposition to Caesar's political advancement. So basically he took time, crafted it very carefully, and said, hey, look, we're building homes for homeless people and giving rewards to veterans, and we're sticking our hands out of it. We've made it extensively not beneficial to us. We'll fund for it, just to prove it. So the only people who opposed were just being unreasonable because they disliked Caesar. Unable to overcome Cato's filibustering, he moved the bills before the people, and at a public meeting, Caesar's co-consul Bibulus threatened a permanent veto for the entire year. I'd forgotten about this. So for those who don't know, filibustering is essentially Cato stood up at the Senate and spent like 24 hours straight debating the bill. And because he wasn't done debating, they couldn't vote on it. So he took it to the people at a public meeting instead. And then the vice president was like, hey, if you approve this, I'm going to veto everything you do for the entire year, and you will do nothing else. This clearly violated the people's well-established legislative sovereignty and triggered a riot in which Bibulus' faces were broken. So yeah, basically, people were like, hey, this is a public vote. You can't just say, if this doesn't go the way I want it to, I'm stopping everything else from happening for the entire year. They got real mad. And this symbolized popular rejection of his magistracy. The bill was then voted through. Bibulus attempted to induce the Senate to nullify it on grounds that it was passed by violence and contrary to the auspices, but the Senate was like, nah bruh, talk shit, get hit. You played with fire. Limbus is a great experienced player reward with the battle pass. Think of being able to farm 1/7 for higher value from a roguelike mode. I do like roguelikes. I do think I'll just start playing Limbus Company. Off stream. I'll give it a try later today if I have time. I have some things on later today. Speaking of, I am certainly not going to get through the entirety of this Wikipedia page. So I'll probably finish this segment and then wrap up for the day. I get too excited talking about history. Caesar also brought and passed a 1/3 write-down of tax farmers' arrears for Crassus and the ratification of Pompey's eastern settlements. So basically, Pompey captured this land, we're making it officially his, and these guys are paying too many taxes, let's give them a tax break. Both bills were passed with little or no debate in the Senate. Caesar then moved to extend his agrarian bill to Campania sometime in May. This may be when Bibulus withdrew to his house. Pompey, shortly thereafter, also wed Caesar's daughter Julia to seal their alliance. An ally of Caesar's, plebeian tribune Publius Vatinius, moved to the Lex Vatinia, assigning the provincias of Illyricum and Cisalpine Gaul to Caesar for 5 years. I remember Cisalpine Gaul because that's, no offense to any Illyricum people, Cisalpine Gaul was important. Suetonius has claimed that the Senate had assigned to Caesar the Sylvae Calesque, or the Woods and Tracts, is likely an exaggeration. Fear of Gallic invasion had grown in 60 BC, and it is more likely that the consuls had been assigned to Italy, a defensive posture that Caesarian partisans dismissed as mere forest tracts. The Senate was also persuaded to assign Caesar Transalpine Gaul as well, subject to a new annual renewal, most likely to control his ability to make war on the far side of the Alps. So hey, this is a really important path, we'll give it to you, but we need to check in each year to make sure you're not drafting any war plans. Sometime in the year, perhaps after the passing of the bill distributing the Campanian land, and after these political defeats, Bibulus withdrew to his house. There he issued edicts in absentia, purporting unprecedentedly to cancel all days on which Caesar or his allies could hold votes for religious reasons. Like, it's actually embarrassing how petty and pathetic Bibulus was at this stage. Just outright petitioning, hey guys, let's cancel every day they can try to pass legislation. Because I worship the flying spaghetti monster, and he says anyone named Julius Caesar isn't allowed to be in charge. My only gig was teaching myself about Brothers of Grimm stories, as well as Lovecraft and Greek gods. Man, the Brothers Grimm, very interesting stories. Lovecraft, also very interesting, if you can look past all of the N-bombs and racism. And the Greek gods, very, very interesting. There's a reason so many people research it. It's very fascinating, and there's an almost endless abyss of things to learn about. Like, man, this is just Caesar, and just reading, like, not gonna lie, they have not even covered 10% of the stuff he has done that was incredibly notable up until this point, and we haven't even gotten to him being important yet. Cato too attempted symbolic gestures against Caesar which allowed him and his allies to feign victimization. These tactics were successful in building revulsion to Caesar and his allies throughout the year. This opposition caused serious political difficulties to Caesar and his allies, belying the common depiction of triumviral political supremacy. So yeah, everyone thinks the triumvirate runs everything, but basically everyone else was constantly throwing shade, so while they were still able to do a lot, there were a lot of struggles. Later in the year, however, Caesar, with the support of his opponents, brought and passed the Lex Julia de Repetundus to crack down on provincial corruption. When his consulship ended, Caesar's legislation was challenged by two of the new praetors, but discussion in the Senate stalled and was regardless dropped. So they tried to roll back his "hey, don't be corrupt" legislation, and the Senate was like, come on guys. We're still allowed to be corrupt, it's just limited. This is a fair limit. He stayed near the city until sometime around mid-March. Okay, now let me actually check quickly how long this section is. Okay, yeah. I'll read these next two paragraphs and then I'll end there. Because I do unfortunately have things to do today. And this is... It's actually shocking how much they're skipping over. It does make sense though, this is a very general overview. During the Gallic Wars, Caesar wrote his commentaries Theorion, which were acknowledged even in his time as a Latin literary masterwork. Meant to document Caesar's campaign in his own words and maintain support in Rome for his military operations and career, he produced some 10 volumes covering operations in Gaul from 58 to 52 BC. Each was likely produced in the year following the events described and was likely aimed at the general or at least literate population of Rome. We take literacy for granted. That is not the case. Literacy is a massive privilege. The ability to read and write is the reason Christianity spread to a lot of religious areas it wouldn't make sense, because the only books they had were the Bible, and people were taught to read and write through the Bible. The account is naturally partial to Caesar. He wrote it. His defeats are excused and victories highlighted, but it is the almost sole source for events in Gaul in this period. But again, if you go into it thinking, hey, Caesar wrote this, he's not going to go, oh yeah, I really dropped the ball there. It'd be like if you asked LeBron James to summarize his basketball career. He might point out a few like notable defeats in the sense of, here's how we improved, or here's what we learned, or here how it wasn't my fault. He wouldn't go hard on himself. But it's all we have. Literally the only source we have. Gaul in 58 BC was in the midst of some instability. Tribes had raided into Transalpine Gaul, and there was an ongoing struggle between the two tribes in central Gaul which collaterally involved Roman alliances and politics. The divisions within the Gauls, as they weren't a unified bloc, would be exploited in the coming years. The first engagement was in April 58 BC, when Caesar prevented the migrating Helvetii from moving through Roman territory, allegedly because he feared they would unseat a Roman ally. Building a wall, he stopped their movement near Geneva, and after raising 2 legions, defeated them at the Battle of Bibracte, before forcing them to return to their original homes. This was like such a jackass move. It's I won't get too much into it, but man, this is... I do feel bad for the Helvetii. They did kind of get screwed over by Caesar here. He was drawn further north, responding to requests from Gallic tribes, including the Aedui, for aid against Ariovistus, king of the Suebi and a declared friend of Rome by the Senate during Caesar's own consulship, and he defeated them at the Battle of Vosges. Wintering in northeastern Gaul near the Belgae in the winter of 58 to 57, Caesar's forward military position triggered an uprising to remove his troops. Able to eke out a victory at the Battle of Sabas, Caesar spent much of 56 BC suppressing the Belgae and dispersing his troops to campaign across much of Gaul, including against the Veneti in what is now Brittany, or Britain. At this point, almost all of Gaul, except its central regions, fell under Roman subjugation. You're gonna dip? No worries, thanks for coming by, Nuknu. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Ciao. Seeking to buttress his military reputation, he engaged Germans attempting to cross the Rhine, which marked it as a Roman frontier. Displaying Roman engineering prowess, he here built a bridge across the Rhine in a feat of engineering meant to show Rome's ability to project power. Ostensibly seeking to interdict British aid to his Gallic enemies, he led expeditions into southern Britain in 55 and 54 BC, perhaps seeking further conquest or otherwise wanting to impress readers in Rome. Britain at the time was to the Romans an isle of mystery and a land of wonder. He, however, withdrew from the island in the face of the winter uprisings in Gaul, led by Eburones and Belgae starting in late 54 BC, which ambushed and virtually annihilated a legion and 5 cohorts. This is a massive army. Massive. Caesar was, however, able to lure the rebels into unfavorable terrain and routed them in battle. The next year, a greater challenge emerged with the uprising of most of central Gaul, led by Vercingetorix of the Averni. Caesar was initially defeated at Gergovia before besieging Vercingetorix at Alesia. The Battle of Alesia, very Chad. I will do a video on it sometime. After himself becoming besieged, Caesar won a major victory which forced Vercingetorix's surrender. Caesar then spent much of his time in 51 BC suppressing any remaining resistance. Politics probably isn't a fun one to end on, so I'll just rant about the Battle of Alesia a little bit and then end it. The Battle of Alesia is one of the most giga-chad battles that has ever taken place in all of history, where instead of sieging a city, Caesar built a wall around the city and made them siege him. And then when they had reinforcements, built a wall around his wall, and held off a siege from both directions. Anyway, this went a little bit longer than anticipated because I got distracted way too much. Thank you all so much for coming. I will dip here. I know this is definitely not as fun as usual streams. Thanks for putting up with me, and hope you enjoyed. Catch you around next time. Bye-bye, everyone.